Please welcome our superhero speakers, Liz Pham and Simon Owen. Today, they'll be showcasing premiering content in their session, Creating a Power Platform Pandemic Through Viral Adoption. Please stick around after Liz and Simon's session for a live Q&A.
Hi everyone, welcome to our session called Creating a Power Platform Pandemic Through Viral Change. We recognize the title of our session might have raised some eyebrows. We wanted to let you know that we're not trivializing what each of us had gone through during the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the topics we covered is called viral change, and we wanted to use that concept of widespread change as a theme for our session today. So we'll hope you continue with us and enjoy the presentation we've put together and how that relates to user adoption. And if you have any questions, feel free to message us in the chat throughout the entire conference. We're happy to answer any questions along the way. And most importantly, we want to give a big thanks to everyone here that's in attendance, and also a big thanks to DynamicsCon, all of the folks that are presenting, have put together this event, and really for this community for having us here today. So we're really excited to be here with you. Before we get into it, I'd love to introduce myself and also Simon as well. So I'm Liz. I'm a Power Platform Solution Architect at Avanade. I am focused on governance and experience design. So for today's session, I'm going to put on my alter ego hat as Professor Liz.
Yeah, hey folks, Simon Owen. I'm also at Avanade, work alongside Liz in the Power Platform Centre of Excellence. A lot of what I do is around the governance and adoption of the Power Platform. So we're going to share some of those stories with you today.
Awesome. So, here's us getting into our alter egos, and let's get into it.
So first of all, we've got to think about what are we trying to solve here? What's the challenge that we're trying to do? So what we're really trying to achieve is trying to deliver as much value as possible with our investment in the Power Platform. And it's not just a financial investment, it's also an emotional investment. So what do we think about when we're trying to deliver some of this change? So one part is that value bit. So what do we mean by value? What do we mean to different people? What does that mean out in the organization? We'll explore some of these things as we go. So what are we trying to change as well? Are we just trying to change the way that people solve problems? Are we trying to change some pieces around processes? It's all sorts of things we could dig into there. And a lot of the time when we talk about change, we talk about driving change through an organization. So traditionally, that's top down. There might be another way we can explore that as well, because some of that thing links in with resourcing. So if we're trying to do something across a whole organization, identify a load of change agents and really embed the change well, there's a lot of effort. There's a lot of people involved, a lot of coordination needed. So there's a different way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What's the solution that we can explore? And really, it's about experimenting. It's about an agile mindset. It's about looking at what parts work for your organization and doing more of those, seeing what doesn't, and maybe do a little bit less of that. And what essentially we're trying to do is to create pull so that people across the organization, they understand what's in it for them. What's the difference that it'll make in their day-to-day lives? And they want to be part of it. So they'll grab and they'll get involved by copying others. So we're talking about people change, we're talking about process change, and a lot of it is supported by technology as well as being part of a technology change. So we'll look at aspects of that. But really, we're trying to put the people at the middle of this and think, well, if I'm going through this change or if I'm exposed to this different way of working, well, what's it in it for me? Why should I be bothered? Why should I try and get in and spend some energy on looking at some of these things? So if we drill into a couple of those topics. So first of all, what's value? So what you'll see here is a rooms of the house type model. So in each of the rooms is a different part of the organization, perhaps a different leader in there. So you'll see that we've got folks like financial and operations. We've got some IT rooms. We've got some people-based rooms. And of course, they look at value across the whole organization. But if you think about their speciality areas, that financial and operations, well, largely financial is about how many dollars can I save? How much time can I save? How can I improve quality? How can I improve output? But if we think about something like the IT organization, maybe there's some different value that they're looking at. So maybe shining a light on that shadow IT, or feeding their roadmap with some other ideas that perhaps their services don't cover. But one of the big pieces of value that we don't necessarily think about is those people pieces of value. So from an organization perspective, if we're kind of promoting ourselves as working and living and solving problems in this new and exciting way, perhaps we're more attractive for people joining our organization. Or maybe we're making work really fun and exciting and a bit more interesting than it was before, and we're retaining that talent. So there's some different angles that we can look at this. But if we really think about the employees and what's important to them, well, maybe it's the value for them is enjoying coming to work, being empowered to solve problems, owning your own development, stuff like that, that might lead to promotions, or it might lead to a broader role. So there's all sorts of ways we can look at value in this context.
That's really interesting, Simon. We're taking a look at these different rooms of the house that have people in it. And, I know for you and I, we see a lot of potential in empowering people from any corner of the business, to really learn new skills, find different problems to solve. And really, it could even just be being a part of a community, where you can get out of your everyday, tasks and activities and be able to connect with the group that's doing something exciting and something maybe new and refreshing. And it's really interesting because when you think about human behavior, people naturally want to find solutions. People want to be helpful. But if something is too difficult or somebody has to figure it out on their own and there's not enough support, that upstart might actually be really daunting and intimidating. So when we think about it through the lens of what's in it for me, part of that is, how am I getting help to get there? How can we make it easier for people to realize like, oh, there's a new opportunity here. Maybe there's something worth trying here. And maybe I can connect, value that I want to share with the world to potentially what the value the business might be trying to achieve. And so it's starting to figure out, are there some commonalities there and how can we lean into that a little bit more and see if we can grow together?
Yeah, and you said something really important there. It's about being part of something. So that community piece is a real strong aspect of what we're talking about today. So that leads us on nicely to talking about, well, what are some of those different types of change? So what you can see on this slide, we've got a triangle. So that's our organization. And if we think about traditional change management, it's very much process driven. So it's looking at setting that North Star. What's our vision? So what's the change that we're trying to drive? What's the experience that people are going to, or the process that people are going to do differently? Where do we need to train them in? Where are our change agents through the organization? How do we pilot that, cascade it down the organization, get our advocates, and then scale it across? Whereas what we're talking about here, in terms of viral change, these are little pockets, these are sparks that could happen anywhere across your organization. And what I've shown on the slide is that it's like a firework. So these things can burst all over the place, and organically there's people finding these different ways of working, finding these tools, and that there's a different way of doing things. And what we're trying to do here is actually bring those together and cultivate them as a planned activity, that we're trying to set off these sparks as much as we can. And those broaden by setting up a network. So we know people across the organization, not just in our silo, not just in our part of the world, but these are real strong networks that we can leverage. So what we're going to do, I'm going to challenge Liz. And if you want to play along in the chat, please feel free, and throw in other examples if you've got them as well. So let's have the first one, Liz.
I love a good challenge, so I'm looking forward to this. All right, first one.
Okay, so Teams, Microsoft Teams. I'm rolling out Teams across my organization. Which side do you think this is commonly sitting on, and what's your thoughts?
So Teams, I'm thinking of this as a communication tool, and there is a strong chance that there's probably already some form of a communication tool that exists out there. So I would imagine that this is something that you want everyone to use right away up front. So I think I'm leaning a little bit towards the left, where that might maybe require more a traditional form of change management to really get that implemented. But I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. So in our experience, that's kind of the approach that happens. You might run, now obviously COVID upset some of these traditional plans, or really accelerated them. But that's pretty common, I think, that it would get cascaded down through an organization. There's a clear vision of what they're trying to achieve. So yeah, let's see where that one moves to.
Drum roll. Yay, 1 point.
Okay, so we're just going to run through a few of these a little bit quicker now that you've got the idea. So
That sounds
something
exciting.
like ChatGPT. Yeah, so really topical. Loads going on with ChatGPT at the moment. How do you see this stacking up?
I'm curious to see what's going on in the chat right now, but my gut says that ChatGPT is probably viral behavior or an example of viral change.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot. Yeah, I think as you were probably going to say. So I started exactly the same way, playing around with it. I see loads of people across LinkedIn or Twitter, my network, my friends, all saying, "Oh, look, I put in this crazy question, and this is the amazing stuff that came out." And they're people like me. They're folks who really like technology. They're in the Power Platform space, so we're all experimenting, and I'm inspired by things that they're doing. And I want to try it as well. So it's a real strong example of viral change.
Yeah, and the interesting thing there too, and just what you mentioned, is this is the community, our networks talking about it. And we're turning to our organizations and asking them, like, when are we going to use ChatGPT? So that's also another trait or behavior of viral change is it's not necessarily coming from the top, it's from us seeing the excitement and now asking questions on, is this ever going to be reality? Let's talk about this and figure out, is there a future here? So I think that's a really great example of viral behavior. So Let's see where we end up, as we thought.
Hey!
All right, next one.
So just a couple more. So I think we can go through this one. So this is like an organization's rolling out a new capability or a new service or something that's non-compulsory, perhaps. So as you might expect, a lot of the way that this is commonly done is to set the vision, set the plan, roll it out through different layers of leadership, cascading the information, advocating the change. So as I'm sure you guess, so this one's more of a traditional change that's usually happening.
All right, next one.
Another different one. So a lot of auto manufacturers, they have these big advertising budgets. They use the press, they use the TV, they use radio to highlight what these new models are, these new capabilities that they are. Tesla's been a bit different in that they don't have a big advertising budget, not a formal one at least. And they use this network of people who are already on the journey to be those advocates, talk to their peers. So people like them, people with similar roles, people with similar levels of wealth. All of those things encourage people along. They hear about the experience.
Mm-hmm. I would lean towards viral behavior, and it just makes me think about early adopters. There's a group that's like really excited. They're already ready to change their lifestyles to support, every time you might need to charge, or whether they do it at home or they make a trip to the station. And I think that's still something that's working its way into the mainstream, right? I mean, we could go off on a tangent about, infrastructure and everything, but I think just, electric cars, I would lean towards viral change or viral behavior.
Yeah, I would at this stage as well. Certainly starting to get more mainstream and more traditional, isn't it? So then this last one, what do you think about Charlie here? So to give a bit of context, so for those that don't know, Charlie is the biggest TikTok star in the world. She's got 107 million followers. Now, I haven't heard any news stories about her engaging sponsors, identifying stakeholders, writing a change management plan, cascading it through. Haven't heard any of that. I could be wrong, but what do you think, Liz?
I'm going to go with, again, viral behavior on this one. I mean, just the things that you mentioned that, she probably didn't start out looking for sponsors. She was probably just like, oh, this is a really great platform. I'm just going to post some videos and see how the world reacts. And the next thing you know, she went viral. So
yeah, exactly. And so for those that haven't seen her videos, she lip syncs and dances over clips of videos. So something really simple that others can connect with. They can see her having fun. And these are all traits that we're going to be talking about and bringing to life over the rest of our session here today. So when we think about change, we think about this curve. So independent of what we do, there's these innovator groups. They're already out there. They're probably in your organizations. They've found the platform. They've already started experimenting. They're solving problems with it. Whatever you do, they're already on board. You don't need to kind of worry too much about bringing them along on the change. Then we've got these early adopters. So through a traditional approach, they're definitely the people who would come along on it. They're the people who are interested. They connect to the why. They understand some of the value and how they could use it. They're happy to come along. But what we start to then see is this bit of a chasm. So we can start to bring some of those early adopters, that early majority along. But will we get all of them? It really depends on how that cascade happens through the organization. It depends how we put that information out there, whether it lands with them, whether there's the leadership sponsorship and understanding of what the platform can do and what it might mean for the future, and whether they're strong advocates about how they drive that through their organization. So what we're trying to do here is to use those principles of some of that social media adoption to really inspire and excite people, bring them along and start their journey, and then we'll help them along and we'll get them to talk to others and do some of that promotion for us. So what we're going to do is just bring that to life a little bit for you.
Yeah, so before we get to the next part here, we started talking a little bit about this curve, bringing people on a journey. And I know, Simon, something that you often talk about is the maker movement. What is it?
Yeah, so maker movement is the way that I describe this viral change piece. So it's based on experience that we've had using these same techniques, rolling out adoption and encouraging people to grab the platform and do cool stuff with it. Maker movement is a bit of a structured way that we'll take you through that will bring it to life. Well, how do I do that in my organization? So it's really about almost canning that viral approach and making it repeatable.
Can we see this in action at all?
Absolutely. We've got an excellent video just for 3 minutes, and feel free to dance along with it. So,
spoiler alert. All right, here we go. The making of a maker movement.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower
I don't know if I can do that.
Transforms a lone nut. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut, and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader.
Fancy.
Everyone needs to see the followers, because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not
I love this video.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing the first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
So I really, really love this video. And this was one of those great aha moments that it wasn't whilst we were first exploring this or using these techniques that I found it by chance on the internet. And it was like, oh my God, this brings it to life perfectly. That is viral change. Now, obviously, it's not in a corporate environment, but a lot of the principles are exactly the same. It's having fun. It's doing something simple. It's encouraging others to join along. And in this story, we're that shirtless dancing guy. So if we show those principles, we use those behaviors, we make ourselves easy to follow, others are going to start copying. They're going to see what we're doing. We're going to see that we're having fun, that we're delivering value. And if we're not those people in the middle and we start celebrating all of those first followers and the second followers, well, then they've got networks too. People will start copying them. And this is how it starts to snowball. So it spreads out through their network that if we set the behaviors about having fun, about being enthusiastic, about showing the value, we'll start to bring the organization with us and start them wanting to be involved. The more people we can infect, the more value that we get in all of those different value types.
So Simon, what you're saying is there's a level of FOMO, the fear of missing out on all the fun at some point in time, right? So we may be the shirtless guy putting our neck out there, just doing what seems and feels right for us. And then it's just, wow, like you just see it progress and it's just like, oh, maybe I do want to be a part of that. It looks like a lot of fun. Maybe I should join. And, oddly enough, it makes me think about, when you travel and you go somewhere and you ask for recommendations from your friends. First thing you do is you like punch into your phone, like, oh, I wonder what the Google reviews are. Like, should I go there? What are the top dishes I should eat? So that's just an example that came to mind on how we're actually really influenced by what other people think, whether it's for good or for bad. We're just curious to see, how else would somebody judge this? Are their preferences similar to mine? Should I, take a risk and try this new restaurant, try this dish? So I just always find that really interesting when you look at, behaviors and just how people get influenced.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that can be conscious or it could be unconscious. So just as simple as you telling me, oh, I went to this great restaurant the other day, you must try the chicken. It was the most amazing chicken that I've ever had. So chances are when I go there, I'm not going to want to risk not having this amazing chicken. So I'm influenced by what you're doing, about the great experience that you've had. And it's tapping into that we're really trying to do here. And to bring it to life even more. So before I was in Avanade, I had a real job. So I worked in a completely different organization. I was there for 16 years. And part of what I was doing was I discovered the Power Platform was available to us. And I started to experiment with helping others adopt it as well and see. And it started off very experimental. We started with 8 people, really amazing people, actually, really, who knew their data, knew the processes, knew some opportunities. And we just experimented together. And we used these same principles then to start sharing these stories, not just about the things that people were creating, but also the people. So showing people how they would follow too. And what I'll do a little bit later is tell you how that then scaled from those 8 people and the types of value that are really possible and we've seen in other customers that we've worked with as well.
Simon, are you really going to put a cliffhanger out there for all of us and make us wait?
Uh-huh.
All right. I guess we'll just have to hang tight then. Okay, so Simon, how do you create a maker movement? How do we recreate what we had just seen in that video and really bring it to life, in our world?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is just take you through the model that we've pulled together. So based on that experience, we bottled it for you so you can start doing this stuff yourself. So on this first page, what we'll look at is the model on the right-hand side there. So really, it's about behaviors. It's about people. So the first step is establishing those behaviors. So what's that dance that we're going to start the party with, and making it really clear, making it really explicit. Well, what do we do and why do we do it, and inspire people to start on that journey. Then we move into the enabling behaviors part. So they've started, they're bought in, they want to do it. Now we need to have to help them. So part of that is educating them. And it might be using stuff like App in a Day, Flow in a Day courses. There might be some formal elements to it. It might be coaching them. It might be engaging with them kind of one-to-one or small groups to really give them some of that knowledge to really understand how to start using some of these tools. Then we need to help them find a use case. So we need to ideate a little bit. And, well, what does make a good Power Platform use case? And we've got to make it fairly small so that it's nice entry level. We can help them understand, well, how do I understand the process? Who are my users? What are their needs? What's the data that needs to support this? And then what goes on top? Is it a flow? Is it a bot? Is it an app? Is it a BI report? So we need to help make them successful, because there's no better feeling in the world, I think, than that first problem that you solve. And one day you've got this app on your phone that you never dreamed you would be able to make, and you show the world you're super proud of it, and you want to, and you quite rightly so, you should be proud of it. We want people to get that buzz. And then it's this reinforcing. Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I was gonna add, I feel just even, you mentioning you build an app and then other people are using it and you're just so proud because I built that. And I can imagine so many of us here in the audience have had that feeling where we had that aha moment of we made an app and it did a thing. And then the next version of that is I made an app, it looks beautiful, and it does even more cool things. So I feel that's probably a feeling everyone here can relate to, is the first time you sparked your fire, right? Like, wow,
Definitely.
It's like using an iPhone, like, can't believe it just did the things. There's no buttons, it just did the things.
Such an amazing feeling. And it's that seeing somebody's face light up and seeing how proud they are telling you about it. No better feeling. Really, really love seeing that in people. And then we go on to reinforce those behaviors. So what we want to do is celebrate those people. So we celebrate the solution that they built and the business value and what impact it's had to their teammates. But we really, really celebrate the people. So those folks have gone on their own journey. They've owned their own development. They've found their own problems. We need to be shouting about that. They're doing things differently than people have done before. So we need to tell people, we need to showcase them and the solutions. And we share that more broadly. So as wide as we possibly can, as long as they're happy with that. So not everybody wants that kind of visibility. But we should at least tell their manager that they're doing this crazy stuff. They're making a real difference. These are capabilities that they should really get on board with. And you'll see that then starts to drive the circle. So if we can work our way up or around the organization in this leadership level, they start to understand, they start to see people in their organization changing the world. And then the penny drops. They understand that there's an opportunity here and start to encourage the next round of people to solve problems. And this is very much a circular thing. So you start small, you find out what's going on, you experiment with different ways of doing these things in your organization, and you grow it. Depending on the maturity, depending on the group that you're working with, you might do different things.
So Simon, question for you here. Does this start in one location within a business or a community? Or are there different pockets of this movement happening? And at some point in time, we might see some convergence happening and groups starting to come together and sharing the excitement? Or is it starts here and then it grows from here? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so from what we see, this is generally starts as pockets of people. So it's those early innovators. And what we can use those fantastic tools like the Microsoft COE Starter Kit and have a look at the reporting and identify who these people are across the organization. And rather than, like in the video, them naturally coming together, actually we can bring them together into that community. We can start directing people to Yammer or to Teams or to whatever other tool we use. Start getting them talking, start getting them share their knowledge, share their problems, share their experience, share their use cases. because all these things help people learn, they help people grow.
And is that how we make a maker movement?
Yeah, exactly that. So those groups come together, they start to grow in that viral way, and initially it takes energy. You've got to keep making sure that people's questions are answered, that every post has a response. You start engaging with the business, start attracting them in or leading breadcrumbs so that they can follow your group. But it gets to a stage where and for me, it was around 300 people in that community, where actually, rather than jumping in and making sure everyone had an answer or they were connected to someone else, I'd sat on my hands and I resisted. And you start to see those champions emerge from your group. They start to answer some of those questions themselves. And every now and again, you keep putting the energy in. But actually, as that community grows, those people start to help each other. You break down some of those organizational silos, and that's when you really know that you've got a movement.
That's awesome. Simon, it just makes me think about the user group that we have here and everyone here attending DynamicsCon. You just think about everyone was brought here because they either had worked with Dynamics somewhere in the Microsoft space. Then you hear something about Power Platform and people start to band together and figuring out, okay, how does this thing work? And then you have people just full of passion and people who just want to be a part of, that fun in that community. So it's really the people that allow for events like DynamicsCon to be possible, because it's about people and their passions and the movement that we have going on here. Like, this is like, even though this is my second time ever presenting, like, it's one that I look forward to because there's just so much. I mean, we're dressed up, like, we're clearly, making the most out of our session. So this is just a testament to being a part of a movement. In this case, this is the DynamicsCon, the user group movement that we're in here.
It really
so,
is.
Simon,
And I was just going to add, so this community aspect, it's about paying it back as well. So one of those behaviors that we're trying to establish is this element of sharing, that we're better off by sharing our knowledge. We learn from others, we get inspired, we learn more. And there's a real great phrase from the Power Addicts community as well. We rise by uplifting others. And that's truly the ethos that we need to hold here.
Absolutely. Simon, I remember you was it cruising around on LinkedIn and you came across something?
I certainly did. Yeah. So just 3 months or so ago, there was another big aha moment. So one of my friends from my old organization, she shared a link to a book and to a post from a guy, this Leandro Herrero. And all of a sudden, my world then opened up again. So I realized that this viral thing is actually a thing. There's so Leandro, he's written books about it. He's got an organization that does it, and he's put a lot more of the thinking and the strategy around what I did and what I did experimentally, and really opened my eyes to thinking about those extra pieces on why some of it worked and why some of it didn't. So Liz, you're going to take us through some of these disciplines just at a high level to make that connection, and really give credit to Leandro for some great thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something Simon had shared with me, and Simon and I nerd out all the time about adoption. How do we create positive experiences? And when we came across this, it was like an aha moment that went off for us. So just high level, walking through the 5 disciplines. The first one is non-negotiable behaviors. So this goes back to that concept Simon had introduced of establishing behaviors. What are those behaviors that you want to see from whether it's the community or the people that are already showing interest in, let's say, Power Platform? Examples of that would be, uplifting others, encouraging, being open and inviting. It could also be things such as, hey, anyone that's, came onto Power Platform and made their first app and published it, let's give them a shout. So that way people understand, like, hey, when you come here, we're going to recognize, you taking the first step. And then beyond that, once, you become a top maker, then it's also making the conscious decision and understanding, why is this important to our team or our organization that we want to highlight these people, and then also, help uplift them in the community and, providing them support as well. So again, this goes back to, what are the behaviors that you want to see and that you would like to continue to enable? So once you start thinking about that, now you get into, okay, we've established the behaviors. Now we start building up those peer-to-peer networks. So this is, again, just thinking about how a maker movement doesn't necessarily start just in one place. There might be other pockets that we're just not aware of yet. So as you start having conversations and people see that you're empowering others, you might find yourself running into another peer, another person, or just somebody in your network that's like, hey, I've been doing that too. And so that's an example of where, some of these behaviors are starting to be enabled and then also reinforced by the network. And then through those networks connecting, you start to develop this informal organization where it's not necessarily top down. This informal organization goes across silos. So it doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter what department you're in or who you're friends with. It's really, hey, what is that one common thread that brings us all together? And in this case, it's Power Platform and just learning how to use the platform in low code, no code, and all of that good stuff. So from there, we start to get more into storytelling. So even from the start, when we have, we're thinking about non-negotiable behaviors, some part of that is you'll find yourself starting to tell a story on why is that important to us. But then over time, as the network builds and you have this informal organization, you'll have more stories to tell. And then you can also tell stories about how things have matured. And I know Simon has shared one of his anecdotes about how, at the previous organization he was at, how it just started off with a small, very small group of people. And then next thing you know, he's got a couple hundred people just enjoying how he's fostering and nurturing that community. And that's an example of backstage leadership. So Simon, as he mentioned, at some point in time, he had to make the conscious decision to step back and allow the group to flourish and lead themselves. And he also made himself available so that should anyone need help, he would always be there. But his role at that point in time was like, hey, I really feel good about what we have here. And so I'm just going to take a step back to see if what we have in place can, really sustain itself. And so for us, when we came across this article, it was like, whoa, great minds think alike. And that reinforced that, we're onto something. We're not the only people thinking about change in terms of, how do you create widespread change through networks versus making this grand master plan and then executing on that plan and hoping that, all 72 steps work out perfectly. But yeah, so that was a really, really good find. So I'm very appreciative, Simon, just being able to discover that and going, holy smokes, this makes sense and we're not making things up.
I really liked when we were talking about backstage leadership earlier and you likened it to Nanny McPhee and someone being there if you need to. And I think that was the only time I've ever been compared to Nanny McPhee in my whole life.
Yeah, I'm there if you need me, and if you don't, then I'll be gone. But the second you need Nanny McPhee, she'll be right there. So that was just what came to mind when it came to backstage leadership. So speaking of backstages, I'd like to take everyone on this journey on thinking about what actually goes into the making of a maker movement. So this is where I get to put my scientist hat on to figure out how do we actually put this into motion. And this kind of leans towards thinking about experiences, right? And how do you support interactions and also encourage interactions to happen across different groups? So we're going to take a look at a stage here. So I want everyone to think about creating a movement as needing to share a story. Like you have something that you want to share with the world, and you might be the only person that's thinking this way right now. But our goal here is to figure out how do we inspire the audience and how do we engage? So the mental model I'm going to use here is a stage. So think of the last performance you went to, whether it was a conference, a musical, or seeing your favorite artist perform. With a stage, you have different people doing different things, but as they work in concert, that's how the show is brought to life. So think about DynamicsCon and how there are many different groups of people coming together to bring this event to life and to make it what it is and how special it is. So to break down some components, we have a backstage, we have a front stage, and then we have the audience. And then I'll kind of walk you through what and who are some of these people that might be found in these different areas of the performance. So let's start off with the front stage. These are the stars. And in the world of Power Platform, those are your champions, those are your citizen developers. And again, this could be, hey, I'm a lone wolf and I discovered this thing and I'm giving it a try. Or it might be, hey, I ran into a couple people, they're doing something really cool and I'd like to give it a go and see how it is for me. From there, this is where we start to get into the audience. What do others see? So these are the people that are observing from the outside in, going, what is going on over there? That seems pretty cool, but I'm not sure yet. Those people within an organization might be, your colleagues, other employees. So these will be the other citizens. It could be potential steering groups. It can be also people leads of peers going, hey, I see something going on over there, but maybe we need to find out what's happening. And then behind all of that, we have the backstage. So these are the people who are working behind the scenes. These folks might be, your IT enablers. These could be your people leads. These could be steering groups and also project teams where there's already a need for solving problems or needing a tool to be able to accomplish whatever their goals are. And I think the thing I want to call out here is that the movement can really start from anywhere. So it's not saying that, the movement starts in the front stage. Most cases we find that sometimes the movement actually starts like in IT. So that's far backstage where they discovered like, hey, this is an interesting tool set. We want to start using it. How do we make it secure and figure out, how we might enable it? So I think the point I want to make is that even though there's different parts of the performance of where all the people come from, it doesn't necessarily matter that it starts in one specific spot. I think it's everyone coming together is where you start to find yourself building up a community and really starting some feedback loops between these interactions. Because if you think about it, when people discover Power Platform, I'm betting anybody working in IT might say, we need to lock it down. It doesn't seem secure. But you have the business saying, but we need to keep it open. It's going to help innovation. It's going to help, us with productivity and also automating manual processes. So how do these people work together to move in a forward direction? And so that's where you get interactions and feedback loops, where you can start to nurture the community and really bring everyone along, whether you're an outsider observing, you're in the mix and you're already like hands deep in building out Power Platform solutions, or you're someone in the background ensuring that, everything is working smoothly and people have access to the tools and getting the support that they need.
Yeah, and those feedback loops are really critical. So that's where these people all come together as one team. So one example might be where you've locked down your DLP policy, you've only made certain connectors available, but actually there's a business need for it. So they'll start to work within this community, use that relationship with you as a platform owner or an admin perhaps to explain why it's important. And then you can start to make some decisions. And there's another key piece here as well. So if we think about those change management approaches, often those projects run for a finite amount of time. And there's a real risk that backstage piece just drops off. So everything's working, community's growing, it's doing its stuff on its own. That's where we can risk getting into that chasm where actually the adoption drops off or the usage drops off. We need to keep investing some energy from that team who owns the platform and from those business teams.
Yeah, and just a last note here, it just makes me think about, the conference that we're at with DynamicsCon. We have presenters, we have attendees, and then we have the people in the backstage, folks running the video, the audio, coordinating everything behind the scenes. And it's all of these groups of people coming together is what really brings this event to life. And I think, when you look at it through that lens, you start to look at, wherever you work or your client or the organization that you're working with, you start to see, oh, is there a pattern here? Is there a way where I can approach and create excitement without having to get tons of buy-in to figure out how do we implement this change everywhere immediately? I think it's more just noticing like, hey, people start banding together, people want to support, and then that starts to breathe life into the community. So I think that's really cool. Which brings up to, so Simon, what are some like real world outcomes of viral change?
And this is that cliffhanger that I teased with earlier. So some of these real world outcomes that we can get. So my original story, those original 8 people, we ended up with a community of over 4,500 people across the organization, 70 countries, all that digital capability being built so that as bigger problems came along, we were able to then solve them and mobilize ourselves to work together to solve some of those challenges. Also, you see some maturity coming along over that time that it happens, and these capabilities, these skills start slipping into job descriptions. You start recruiting for some of these roles or reorganizing your team so that there's people doing some of this stuff and really delivering that business financial value as well as those people value. And because of that, you're solving thousands of problems across an organization. They may be small, they may be big, but you're really making a difference by driving this adoption. And those things add up. So there's thousands of hours saved, potentially millions of dollars or pounds saved, or new capability that's brought to the organization. And it changes behaviors, it changes organizations. And as you've seen, so it's also changed my career. So 3-4 years ago, I'd never have dreamed that I would be here doing this stuff for a living, things that I love, the number of people that I've built. And now I'm able to be that feedback loop and start putting that back into the organization, back into the community, helping other people go on this journey too.
That's so amazing, Simon. Thank you so much for sharing us. I knew it was a good cliffhanger. So I'm glad we hung tight there. But we're coming to the end of our session. And if there's anything we want you to walk away from our session with is these 4 things. Put the employee experience at the center of your thinking. You know, what is the value in their eyes? I think it's really important to consider that people have perceived value and the business have perceived value. So how do you start linking that together so people can move forward in the same direction for themselves and also for the organization that they may be a part of? Identify the behaviors that you want to embed and why they're important. So that goes back to your why. Why is this important to yourself or to the organization, and really articulating that? And then again, I think Simon and I have kind of gone back to this a lot, iterating. We have worked with so many clients where it's like, we're going to come in with a plan, but be open to reacting and pivoting along the way, because some things are going to work and other things we're going to find, we gave it a good go, but maybe we should try something different. And I think the biggest thing here is that at the end of the day, we just want everyone to have fun. So embrace that shirtless dancing guy in all of us. That video was just amazing way to show how the community can start with just someone getting out there, maybe doing something awkward, and next thing you know, they have a movement created. So that said, we hope you enjoyed our session. We'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So contact us, connect with us, find us, and we'd love to continue this conversation on viral adoption and viral change, and seeing where this goes. So Simon?
Yeah, thanks everyone, and especially thanks to DynamicsCon and putting on this amazing conference. Come and join us in the chat for some live Q&A if you've got any questions. Otherwise, follow up with us offline. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.